You're watching Scriptease. In today's episode, we'll be breaking down a couple of scenes from Amadeus. You can expect mature language and spoilers for the entire film. Amadeus rocked the 1985 Academy Awards, taking home 8 Oscars including Best Adapted Screenplay. Amadeus covers the life of Mozart, painting him as a man who was incredibly talented, yet painfully prone to his human desires. The film is a spectacle. Huge operatic set pieces, extravagant costume design, and a brilliant score that matches Mozart's music to moments from his life. But all of this stage dressing would be nothing without a solid underpinning, a simple yet powerful tale of two men, Mozart and his rival Salieri. The whole film is told from Salieri's point of view, painting him as a man who was born with ambition but without the extraordinary talent of Mozart. In addition to this, Mozart acts like a hedonistic, immature fool, which only deepens Salieri's resentment. If this were just a tale of envy, then the story would be interesting enough, but what elevates the concept is that despite how much Salieri hates Mozart, he also deeply admires him. He compares Mozart's compositions to words from God, and while he condemns Mozart's lecherous behavior, he's also entranced by it. While Salieri embraced chastity and discipline in hope of receiving God's favor, Mozart reveled in passionate debauchery and created his music by instinct. Today we'll be looking at a couple of scenes which capture this conflict between chastity and hedonism to expose why Salieri truly envied Mozart. We'll start when Salieri gets his first impression of Mozart at the residence of the Prince Archbishop of Salzburg. The whole reason Salieri is at the event is to meet Mozart. He clearly respects him from the outset.
This man had written his first concerto at the age of 4. His first symphony at 7. A full-scale opera at 12. Did it show? Is talent like that written on the face?
Salieri is looking to appraise Mozart's talent, but he comes across as judgmental. Salieri is an incredibly religious man, and so he believes in the judgment of God. As he passes people, they bow respectfully towards him. It would be fair to say that having experienced such success in his own musical career, Salieri believes himself capable of discerning talent, of delivering judgment. He is a kind of god in his own right. Of course, that lofty opinion of himself soon comes crashing down. Throughout the film, Salieri's sole vice is sweets. In this first true scene of the film, screenwriter Peter Shaffer makes this point abundantly clear. A servant bearing a large tray of cakes and pastries stalks past. Instantly riveted by the sight of such delights, Salieri follows him. Salieri's point of view. Several tables are loaded with many plates of confectionery. It is, in fact, Salieri's idea of paradise. Sweets are the one pleasure which Salieri allows himself to indulge in, but he still feels as though this indulgence is something to be ashamed of. Salieri sneaks into the buffet room and looks about him cautiously. He reaches out a hand to steal one of the bowls, but at the same moment he hears giggling coming towards him. He ducks down behind the pastry table. All of the language here is as though Salieri is a thief. While it may seem like a childish concern, this reluctance to be caught shows that Salieri feels guilty about his sweet tooth. More broadly, he feels there is something to be ashamed of in giving in to his desires. Through narration earlier, Salieri explained that he took a vow of chastity in the hope that God would bless him with talent and success.
In return, I will give you my chastity, my industry, my deepest humility, every hour of my life. I was a model of virtue. I kept my hands off women. Work and work and work. That was all my life.
Salieri learned through his early life that the more he repressed his passions, the more success he experienced, and falsely attributed this to divine blessing. The net effect of this influence is that he now represses his desires and hides them, so as to avoid judgment from others. What I'm saying here is, Salieri's concealing his love of sweets represents his inability to be open about his passions. Enter Mozart. As Salieri hides, he watches Mozart play around like a complete idiot, chasing after Constance, groping her and speaking in a nonsense, lovey-dovey way. Instantly, Mozart drops to all fours and starts crawling across the floor, meowing and hissing like a naughty cat. Mozart is childish and ludicrous, yes, but viewed another way, he is transparent about his passions.
No, I'm
Just
not
say it.
playing
It's
this
serious.
game.
Imaram.
No!
Say it. You'll see. It's very serious.
Iram, but I love you.
The mood becomes suddenly softer. She kisses him. We see throughout the film how Mozart's energy endears him to people like Emperor Joseph and Constance, despite him being odd. It's because he's true to himself and unafraid to speak his thoughts freely. Of course, it also helps that he's incredibly talented, as Salieri finds out in the very next scene. He stares in disbelief at Mozart. The music swells up and Salieri listens to it with eyes closed, amazed, transported, suddenly engulfed by the sound. Salieri is baffled by this contrast between Mozart's personality and his musical ability, as we learn through narration.
That was Mozart. That giggling, dirty-minded creature I'd just seen, crawling on the floor.
This opening scene establishes Salieri's opposing views of Mozart, but we don't yet know why Salieri despises him so much in his old age. This is the mystery that pulls us along. What does Mozart do that's so egregious as to earn Salieri's hatred? The rest of the first act devotes itself to this question, building up Mozart's intolerability to such a point at which Salieri breaks. We see Mozart commit multiple insults against Salieri. He criticizes Salieri's compositional abilities in front of his peers, he upstages him with an impressive opera, and he sleeps with Salieri's one love interest. While engaged, mind you. Admittedly, Salieri makes his own moves against Mozart out of jealousy, abusing his position by the emperor's side to sabotage Mozart's attempts at climbing the social ladder. Mozart's ego prevents him from playing into Salieri's game, and so it will look like he will be unable to earn the royal appointment he desperately needs. That leads his new wife Constance to naively approach Salieri for help. And that's the second scene I want to look at today. As Salieri teaches one of his students, he sneaks a suite from atop the piano mid-note. He's unable to resist the temptation, which foreshadows the following events. The objective of the two characters in this scene is clear. Constance wants Salieri's help in getting Mozart the appointment, while Salieri wants to harm Mozart. At first, it seems the most obvious way to do this is to pretend to skim over the music sheets and then simply disregard them, thus ensuring Mozart doesn't get the appointment.
Would it be too much trouble, sir, to ask you to look at them now? While I wait.
I'm afraid I'm not at leisure this precise moment. Just leave them with me. I assure you they will be quite safe.
However, two factors change Salieri's actions here. The first is Constance's desperation.
This was my own idea.
I see.
Sir, we really need this job. We're desperate. My husband spends far more than he can ever earn.
I love Salieri's little "I see" here. It perfectly embodies his scheming nature, his mind ticking over all the time. The leverage is there, and Salieri's interest is piqued. The motif of the suites now arises again, Salieri engaging in some seemingly idle chit-chat. Of course, by now, the viewer knows the sexual undertones of suites, and this is made even more obvious by their name.
Nipples of Venus. They're Roman chestnuts in brandied sugar. Try one. Go on, try one. They're quite surprising.
Salieri is clearly interested in Constance, but he still resists the temptation and attempts to show her out. That is, until the second factor kicks in, seeing Mozart's original scores. The framing device of old Salieri talking to the priest pays off perfectly in moments like these. For those of us uninitiated to music, we're able to learn the importance of this moment from the narration. We're also given a verbal description of how the music affects Salieri, to hear from his soul how and why this music is so beautiful.
He had simply written down music already finished in his head. Page after page of it, as if he were just taking dictation. And music, finished as no music is ever finished. Here again was the very voice of God. I was staring through the cage of those meticulous ink strokes at an absolute beauty.
In this moment, Salieri is struck by two thoughts simultaneously. On one hand, he is enraptured with the brilliance of Mozart's work, but on the other, he's confounded by how anyone can be so talented. These two thoughts combine into jealousy, which births outrage at the injustice of the situation. We see his agonized and wondering face. He shudders as if in a rough and tumbling sea. He experiences the point where beauty and great pain coalesce. One might say this is a little too prose-like for a screenplay, but personally I love it. It gives the actor a lot to play with, and by devoting so much space on the page, it emphasizes how vital this moment is to the plot. This is the moment Salieri turns from petty jealousy to outright vindictive envy. Now, knowing Constance's desperation and suffering a great blow to his value as a composer, Salieri takes the crude act of propositioning Constance. This is a great example of how to surprise the audience effectively. Based on Salieri's life of chastity and his usually subtle methods of subterfuge, we don't expect this kind of bold move. But given the revelatory experience he's just had, we totally understand how his repressed sexual desires can burst forth. It breaks our expectations without breaking the logic of the character. This action is also consistent with Salieri's goal in the scene. He wanted to harm Mozart from the outset. By sleeping with his wife, Salieri feels like he can take one piece of Mozart's life with him. In the script, there's a lengthy exchange here between old Salieri and the priest, in which Salieri explicitly details his anger over the encounter, where he begrudges his vow of chastity for never having truly earned him God's favour. Had goodness made me a good composer? I realised it absolutely then, that moment. Goodness is nothing in the furnace of art, and I was nothing to God. While I don't mind this, and it certainly helps with the interpretation of the film, I think it was a tactful choice to cut this section down. The attentive, thinking viewer understands how Salieri felt in that moment, so the narration is unnecessary, and the language is weak compared to some of old Salieri's other interludes. Besides, we still retain the scene of Salieri praying before Constance visits him to make this point.
Dear God, enter me now. Fill me with one piece of true music. One piece with your breath in it, so I know that you love me.
Of course, in this scene, despite his plans, Salieri is unable to bring himself to sleep with Constance. On a surface level, we might think that this is because he realizes as Constance undresses that he doesn't want her at all. What he wants is Mozart's talent, something he can never have. And I'm certain this is true to some degree, but I think the reason Salieri falters in this moment is far simpler. He's awkward. He's never been with a woman. He's never been passionate. He's stunned because this is his first time, and Constance is giving herself over to him, and he doesn't know what to do. And so he calls his servants in to take her away, which is another shock to the audience, but also funny in its own way. Whatever you believe the reason to be, Salieri's frustration grows worse as a result of the encounter, and for this he blames God.
From now on, we are enemies. You and I. Because you choose for your instrument a boastful, lustful, smutty, infantile boy, and give me for reward only the ability to recognize the incarnation.
Salieri believes he has identified the root cause of his frustration, divine injustice. Of course, the disparity between his and Mozart's talents is some source of the anger, but once again, I think the frustration is much simpler than that. He hates that Mozart is passionate, and he is not. He hates that Mozart's music speaks to the soul, while his is rigid and shallow. His inability to seize Constance is a sure sign that he cannot give in to carnal desire. This may sound messed up, but the tragedy for Salieri is that he couldn't have his way with Constance, and worse, that he is unable to see that truth, instead blaming God. As he throws the cross onto the fire, Salieri rejects his own weakness and sets out on a misguided quest to destroy Mozart. The best films operate on two levels, the engaging surface level and the deeper philosophical level. Amadeus capitalizes on its extravagant setting to hook the audience in and uses a classic jealousy plot to pull them along. But even better, the film's deeper philosophical level teaches us to identify the source of our jealousy. Salieri wastes so much effort spurning God and Mozart, but rarely turns his eye towards his own faults. He's dispassionate, and it's only at the end of the film, while writing the Requiem with Mozart, that he becomes truly enraptured in his work, fueled by a desire he has never felt before. He let jealousy ruin his life instead of seeing Mozart as a role model or a friend. The tragedy is that he couldn't learn this lesson earlier. Good writing and good luck.